Oh, my name is Duane S. Brown, and I'm 86 years old. And what this is all about is I decided I was going to write a book for the family, for my life, so that the family coming along will be able to look back and say, why, that was my grandpa, great-great-grandpa, I guess. Anyway, I was born in Richfield, Utah in September 6, 27. Richfield, Utah is in the southern part of Utah, up in a small town in the mountains, about 60 miles north of Las Vegas. So, my earliest recollections that I can dig up, trying to think that is, was one morning. Oh, we lived in a nice house on the main road that goes through town, about a block from the center of town. And there was, well, not many kids, younger than me that hadn't came along yet, was three boys still. So that meant that I was the fourth son in the family. And my father, it was Melvin Archibald Brown was the father, and Elizabeth was the mother. And we lived in a house that was just right about maybe 5 or 6 feet from the main highway, and they had sidewalks, cement sidewalks. And I slept on the porch. The front porch was a big front porch, screened in, and it made a nice bedroom. It was cool at night. And, one morning, it was time to get up, and it was cold, and I felt cold. And the other boys had already got up, and I stayed in bed to try to keep warm, but I couldn't, so everybody else was in the house eating breakfast. So I just got out of bed and gathered up some paper and some sticks and crawled under the bed. I happened to have a match for some reason, and I made a fire. And it got burning okay, so I got up and crawled back in bed and wrapped the blankets around me and covered me up, and boy, after a little while I started feeling so wonderful. I was getting warm, and it was nice. And all at once, I heard a big racket, a siren coming, and of course they was almost there, and it was noisy and a lot of hollering and the tramping of feet. And all at once, the covers was jerked off of me, and it was my mother. All the family had got out and across the street on the other sidewalk, and there's a paved street. It was a modern town. And she had jerked the covers off of me and said, "Oh, here you are," and packed me across the road. Well, I was getting cold again. But I was glad when I looked back and saw the porch all ablaze with fire. Oh, so anyway, my next recollection, we'll forget about that. My next recollection was we had moved to, well, it was north. We moved, it was going north, up where it's still getting colder, to one of his brother's house. He lived
Right.
in Twin Falls, Idaho. And, oh, did I mention I was in about the 4th grade at the time.
Okay.
And so my brother had 3 or 4 kids, or 5. And the boy about my age, I got to sleep in with him in his little bedroom. And yeah, of course, I don't know where the other people slept. But my cousin, he was about my age too, maybe a year older. But first thing he had to show me was his treasure drawer in his bureau, or his chest of drawers. And he opened that bottom drawer, my goodness, he had cars and balloons and everything imaginable that was small in the drawer. And he says, "You know where I got this? I stole it." And he says, "Come on, let's put our coats on and we'll go down to the Cresses there. It's just a block away." And I'm almost sure it's Cresses, but it was a block away. And we went in and he showed me how to, well, you know, get where the guy at the counter couldn't see you, and pick out whatever you want that's small and put it up under your arm. And I think I put a little car and a balloon under my arm, and he had something under both of his arms. Experience. And so we walked up to the counter, and the big old guy there, well, everybody was big anyway, adults, and but he was extra big, and he says, "Raise your arms." Well, you know what happened. He called the police, the siren came up, and 2 policemen came in, and man, they took us down to the police station and they put us through the procedure of thieves. They wrote us all up and said, of course, when they came in the store, they said, "You're under arrest." And, well, that was quite impressive. I was 4 years old, I guess. And so then they fingerprinted us and gave us a lie detector test, and that scared me half to death, that lie detector test, for some reason. Well, the whole thing scared me, and so we had to sit in a room then for a while while the court was starting up in there, and they took us in there and before the judge, and we went through the procedure and had witnesses that saw that we actually took that stuff. We had it in our pockets. And, oh well, the judge, when it was all over, said, okay, you're guilty of whatever it was. I forget exactly what they say, you know. You're going to be sentenced to, what it was instead of going to jail, you're going to have to have, you're sentenced to 24 hours of hard labor. So luckily we got to go home. They didn't put us in a cell, but every morning they came and got us and took us down to a big apartment building, 4 stories. And what we had to do on the back of this apartment building was a steel ring ladder going up to 4 floors of metal grated balconies on each level. And we had to each morning go up and put all the garbage from each apartment, there must have been about 6 or 7 apartments along there, in the garbage can and lower it down to the basement, or not the basement, but the ground level, and put it in a dumpster. They had 2 or 3 dumpsters there. And every morning we had to do that for 5 days. I think that's 40, isn't it? 40 hours or 48 hours or something. But that's what we had to do. So ever since then, when I was a lot older, it had affected me in such a manner that when I was about, even up to, I think it was about in my early 40s, I applied for a job in an apartment building to be the manager. And lo and behold, I had to take a lie detector test. And I was that much older. I had to take a lie detector test to apply for the job, where they ask you, did you ever steal anything and things like that. So, well, the machine almost blew a fuse. Well, it almost burned up. I mean, it said crook thief hollered out and sirens and all that. Anyway, they hired me anyway when I told them what the circumstances was. So that's the end of my criminal career. Glad to get that over with. Anyway, the next memories was, we went from there, from Twin Falls, Idaho to Salt Lake City. And I don't need to tell you the names of all my brothers and stuff yet. I'll tell you those names as we go along.
Okay.
So we went to Salt Lake, and I was old enough there to go to grade school. I think that's what, 4 or 5 or 6 or in there. I'll tell you later if you really want to know. But
right.
Anyway, that's where I started grade school. And my father rented it was a nice house. It had a front big front porch with steps going down about 5 feet down to a sidewalk and about 20 feet from the highway, or the city road. And during the winter, we made snowballs because the porch went around the front and both sides. So it was a wide porch. And we rolled snowballs and made a snow slide from the top of that porch to ride down on, either on our bottom end or on a board or a ski or a snow sled. And we had more fun there. Now I'm bringing things like this up about our life because that's all I remember. I'm remembering all I can.
Right.
And my mind is old, and I don't know how good my memory is, but it's not very good. But anyway, when I went to grade school, the first day was really impressive because that grade school was about a 4-story brick building about a block long. And heavens, you could hardly see from one end to the hallway, main hallway going down, the clouds and that stuff almost in there. Well, it was really dust from the kids, but it was a long walk. But anyway, that's my memories of Salt Lake. That's pretty poor. Okay, from Salt Lake, we moved to Boise, Idaho. Well, Boise, Idaho is the capital city of Boise, and it's a pretty good sized town, built just north of the Boise River, which flowed out of the mountains at that place, around and on down the valley. And the mountain started from Boise and went on up to the top, which is up in the clouds somewhere. Okay, he bought a house. No, he just rented this house, I think, because we only lived there a couple of years, I think. But it was, the city of Boise is on the mountainside of the river because the ground rose up slightly and there's room for a pretty big city. And had a nice big bridge with all that water and the park, city park. It was really nice, really. And then you went up a hill to the train depot. The train depot was up the top of a pretty big slope, about 50 feet high, and well, must have been 60. But that was one of the main highways that went up through Boise and on up to the northeastern part of the United States. Well, we lived about not much more than 3/4 or a mile down the road and up another road, about 5 houses, across railroad tracks. But there's a lot of houses around, but there was still city lots and stuff that was just had one house because it used to be a farm. All that in the old days was a farm land. But it had builded up. And there was mostly pretty thick houses, but we had a nice place that there was probably a half an acre of lots with one house on it on one side, and on the other side 2 or 3 houses. But we had a big house, 2-story and a basement with a basement. And it was about 40 feet from the road And alongside of it was a row of trees, and on the side of the driveway was another row of trees, and these trees was tall. Oh, must have been 60, well, it seemed like it was 100, but I was just a kid, and it was probably about 60 feet tall. And I just loved those trees. I just loved climbing up to the top of them, and you could see all over and that, but that's not the tree I fell out of. The tree I fell out of was back of the house, the apple tree. And I was climbing up in that apple tree, and I fell out of it for some reason. I was an experienced tree climber by then, even though I was still in the first grade. And when I landed, it broke my left arm about 4 inches from the joint, and it broke it clean off, so the whole piece slid over. I looked at that, and I got a hold of it and pushed it back where it was straight anyway, and I went howling into the house. Well, I think Mom must have been a nurse, because she took real fast, wrapped it up good, and then took me down to the doctor. And, well, I still like to climb trees afterwards, though. That house I just loved, because downstairs, the first half of the house was a living room and dining room, and then it had stairs going up to the second floor, and it had high ceilings. And that stairwell was really nice, because at the bottom was a 4-foot area that had doors on 3 sides. Now the door that would hit if you slid down the stairs